I think it's a friendly chat, just told me, right? And asked about the transdisciplinary art of token engineering.
Yeah, so let me introduce you a little bit. So, again, welcome everyone. Sebnem is one of the most brilliant individual I have ever met in the space. She is the founder researcher of Freelio, where they are doing very interesting research about tokenizing real-world assets. She is the she is the steward of Omega Working Group of Token Engineering Commons. She has done ecosystem architecture for Boson Protocol. She's been writing this book called Hitchhiker's Guide to Token Engineering. So as you can see, the list is goes on. So I just wanted to keep it as concrete as possible. So I just today's talk will be about transdisciplinary art of token engineering. We will like get in relation with ethics, AI, system theory, complex systems, and look how the crypto economics will get in relation with those disciplines. So I would like to let the floor to you, Shemna.
Thanks a lot for this nice intro. It's actually one of the first talks I said yes to after quite a long time, and only because you said that the chat was friends, and I was getting curious about Prime DAO. So thanks for the invitation. And yes, and I guess as I mentioned, our crossing paths with you and with Prime DAO has been always in token engineering commons. So that's why I think that's the framing of the exchange tonight. And yeah, so I mean, I have not prepared a talk in a sense like a presentation or anything. I'm just I would love to exchange about maybe your questions. You've been in token engineering. One of the few or one of the most pressing questions that people have is like, what is token engineering? Am I a token engineer? How do I qualify as a token engineer? And as you know, we have this crypto economics flower. It has it comes from the academic milieu of this Foundations of Crypto Economics paper authored by Sherman and Zargam. If you haven't yet read it or if you haven't come across, that's definitely something you should dig in. Basically says that actually, crypto economics isn't new. And it's almost the revival of cybernetics. Just we have much cooler toys now than, for example, I don't know if you know this image of Stafford Beard's installation in Chile, where they had these chairs where you put people into those chairs and they would have at their fingertip the information of the entire economy and can actually optimize and steer it for freedom. So I think crypto economics has the same aspirations. And in this foundations paper, basically, Sharman and Zagam go on to pick, because they have this vast background, it's really amazing. They pick areas or academic disciplines, and each one of them is actually quite interdisciplinary, like AI, operations, research, management, science. One petal is, law, ethics, and philosophy. So these are the little petals of this economics flower. But they picked those directions, saying all of these academic research areas have been actually looking into, what is coordination, what is resource allocation, right? What is steering, and especially when it isn't just mechanical systems, what is steering socioeconomic systems, and what is it when actually those engineering heavy and the humanities come together, which is really the cryptoeconomics. If you ask people in 2017 what is cryptoeconomics, they go, well, it's cryptography, a little bit of distributed computing, and obviously behavioral game theory. That's it. But today, and especially, I guess, Prime DAO knows it well. It's really the social coordination that seems to want to thrive on trustless tech, on technology that you can depend on, transparency, open source. But I guess in 2022 we are very much in a space where we realize, okay, everything that is being built up until now is really just the primitives, the whole layer one, that you can transact value or transfer value across the globe, the minimal infrastructure, but then all of these financial primitives that you can embed into those infrastructures, you can play around with. It's still just the infrastructure, and now we're getting more and more aware of people are coordinating. And people are the ones we try to incentivize with our mechanism designs. And people are messy. Humans are not just humans, but life and these complex systems that we are something between chaos and order. Well, anyways, we started for real to to really collaborate. Also seeing that we don't have enough, we had the need. So especially Common Stack came together, supported by actually everyone who was involved in the token engineering community, to say, okay, let's test this. Let's have this common stack that basically is a stack for managing digital commons, right? But already chosen cryptoeconomic design, an augmented bonding curve, augmented by proposals or the ability to coordinate through proposals. So in 2020, we started getting together and said, okay, let's have this first field trial of token engineering commons, and let's get started. And that token engineering commons is the first field trial of basically a stack of token engineering primitives that we're using. And what happened between early 2020 and now is actually a massive explosion around these primitives. Automated market makers have been really brought into use into many different different instantiations, but still on the infrastructure level, still DeFi, all of those primitives are serving the crypto networks. So when you look at who are the people who are developing it, what is the level of transdisciplinarity that you need? Okay, we added financial engineering to cryptography, a little bit of computer science, and behavioral game theory and financial engineering. Now that is the reality out there. It is a lot more transdisciplinary than you can see elsewhere. But yes, so in the token engineering commons, for example, especially what Common Stack brought in was this one thing where I had a lot of struggle. My background is computer science, and then I learned engineering from Siemens engineers, power systems engineers, so really no nonsense. In a sense, like human or the user is, outside the system. That's the mindset that I came in with, and yeah, I'm here to say it's long gone. But the first time that worldview of mine was really challenged was when I was working actually with Common Stack and Technology Commons, and they brought in praise. Praise? It's a wonderful, it's a wonderful addition actually. But to a layer that I personally had no access to at all. Gratitude. Do you have such a practice in Prime DAO?
I've been begging Mert to bring it. Like
it is messy. But I think the quantification of it is messy. But as a tool, and I think what it's supposed to be doing is really help you practice gratitude. Where you say, especially the Discord bot, I think you can just ask for, integrating it and play around with it is really, and sometimes you feel it, and obviously I'm sure you say it as well, like, thank you, that just, saved my life, or just mind blown. And I think source credit is also, of course, the whole emoji is that social layer. Like, you want to give more, you want to share your thanks, and you want that social appreciation, which is purely qualitative, purely between two people, to be picked up as well as part of your the wealth of your network. Yeah, but I didn't get it at all. Because in the beginning also, it was early 2020, people were still hacking with the tools, no tooling whatsoever. Everything was, and I think still is partially, taken stock in Excel sheets and so on, and people would get together in praise quantification. And I was like, not efficient. And also, you sound like a robot when you say praise this person for doing this thing. Maybe you would do it differently. But as I mentioned, like, it brought in this cultural component, and Livia is basically also the lead in soft golf. And it was the first, as I had mentioned, like, blowing really my worldview, or opening it up through a real challenge, in a sense, something that I didn't really get, that I didn't really think it was important at that time. But actually, that is exactly what we're bringing in. We can quantify all we want, but if we want to have the social interaction, if we want to, and today I'm really into it, if we want to actually have systems that do not dehumanize us and make us work for the system even more efficiently and effectively, that we don't become, bots hunting bounties, but actually the system works for us, so we can collaborate and build relationships, even if 80% of token engineering people, I would say, are socially awkward and rather prefer other means. But it is really, we are building relationships, or people have always been building these relationships, and those relationships are actually very much the value of those networks that we're building. So capturing that, again, praise is the tool, let's say it like this, and evolving and developing from that experiment, I think will be quite interesting. It's worth taking on. And that was, again, as I had mentioned, that was the first time that my engineering heavy mind had to deal with the other side of the crypto economics flower. It's the humanities, like psychology, decision science. How do we make decisions? Where does
Can
it?
I ask
Yes, yes, please interrupt.
Thank you. What incentivized you to give it a try to praise system?
Good question. That's a good one. I had no choice. So Griff incentivized, no, Griff and Olivia. I think, I think it's really their belief that it was something they really believed in. And this intrinsic motivation that they had, that energy, kind of, at least made me think twice, or at least not hold it or anything, or fight it. Just say, okay, I think, back then I don't know what I said, but it's just too cumbersome. We have to work for the tools, and the tools should be working for us. It's still what I say, but back then I really didn't understand, nonetheless, the value add of this tool, or of this different way of getting the signal of value exchange.
Thank you.
I want to ask one question about praise and, in general, reputation systems. So, for example, how would you think, as an interdisciplinary thinking way? So, how would you think as those reputation systems could be some sort of creating moral hazard in terms of social credit systems of China, something like this. So
yes,
how would you get engaged with this? For example, when I get into token engineering commons first, I feel like praise is some sort of I really easily could see that praise could be something like influencer kind of measurement, rather than what you bring to society. Maybe it will be something that you will be popular in a society. So, for example, now when I'm thinking about our current society, who will be the most praised is not the one that bring most value, but the one who is more popular in the society. So, how would you think those reputation systems in terms of transdisciplinary aspect?
Yeah. So first of all, that was also my first misunderstanding of praise. It's not, or not only, or let me put it that way, one should rather, or the value of it is, number one, it nudges you, the praise giver, to practice, really practice, get into the mood of saying thank you and thinking about, what you value, really, this qualitative value that you've seen in this interaction, and think about how you're going to frame that. So it's more about the praise giver that, this that part, and the other.
It's praise
Sorry,
is
yes,
new.
please.
Praise is new to me. So my first engagement with praise, I was confused, and then when it came to me, I was on the spot, what do I say? And so I kind of just went with it. And then, but later, I kind of was oh, this is a reflection of what's resonating with me. And I use that moment to say, okay, what's really resonating with me that I want to signal out to everybody when it becomes my turn to do it. Practice.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's also oftentimes, what you're grateful for is also, it just trains your perception, or your perceptiveness, your awareness. So all of that. But when it comes to reputation, social scoring, and what have you, again, I think these were the things that I picked up at first as well, and was what could go wrong? A lot of things, it can be easily gamed, right? So it shouldn't be the main factor at all. But to be honest, I wouldn't say that we have figured out at all how we're going to account for this value. And we shall be doing a lot of experiments with that as well. Right now, what works out there in the wild practically is only things that can be quantified. That's why we have a financial market. They're really more efficient than current market. The information is, in theory, practically available to everyone, but it's actually not. In theory available, but practically it's not. So people are still, being or we're seeing the misbehavior of markets and so on. So actually, we say, it's cutting edge. The people who are experimenting out there in the trenches are really out there. People who are actually participating in these token networks are pioneers themselves, sleepless nights, rescuing some positions and so on. So, it's not everyone's business. And actually, a lot of the people are losing out. So that's not my business at all. So I'm more, when it comes to that, bloody cutting edge, I'm more, on the sidelines, a bit in the ivory tower. But again, when it comes to, okay, what else could we do? Right? It's really, really hard. How could we quantify the qualitative value, things that we cannot measure, but we must actually account for, else those systems that we're engineering are not going to, produce them. That's a saying of Donella Meadows that I really, really appreciate. There are things that we cannot just measure, but if we wouldn't make an effort to, think of those and make those visible in any way we can, then we will not be able to produce systems or create systems that produce those values or protect those values. So one of the projects that actually I'm in since 2020, the first ecosystem value flows course that we have given, it was a test, can you actually make the design side of this more systems thinking, and how can we actually help the designers, the people actually out there knowing what is the value, right? Become more systems thinkers, and also help them to actually gather that information in a way and put it actually in something like those value flow diagrams that then systems engineers and smart contract developers actually know how to read, so that we have this value flow diagram as a common language. And in that course, and I was always like, or not, I was always, actually in 2019, I almost would have said, okay, I'm out. It's just too crazy and it's not going to change anything. It's just crazy people like ICO craze and everything, and nothing new was coming out. But now I never say never. That's really the most innovative space I have ever been in, and really grateful for the crazy ones. But back then it was already, it seemed very, very difficult. And my rescue was that I met, or that I was having contact and ideas exchange with Charmin, Trent, and basically Zargam is my rescuer, coming really with this system modeling, this engineering perspective, but also with a tool set, CAD as a complex adaptive dynamics, computer-aided design, meaning you can simulate those socioeconomic systems with agent behavior on one side, but also the systems design on the other side, and you have this simulation both of the things that you have designed and how the agents are going to interact with it, and where does it break or can it break. It's still just a simulation, and the reality has actually nothing to do with it, but it's a it's a training simulation. It's good for you. Also for the people, just to see what is it that we have been developing as a system and what are our assumptions, because you have to make them, you have to formulate them to create the model. So, airing those assumptions that you have and making them explainable to computer, then you can explain them to anyone. Actually, you need different skill sets for that as well. So that's why the transdisciplinary narrative or ability to narrate, what Sherman really can do very, very well. These are all the transdisciplinary aspects that we need. And what I wanted to say is, in that course, I was already into, are we legitimate to even, make people do things? That Trent's article from the early days about incentive machines that we are engineering. The mechanics are at work, and can these machines go rogue? Yes, they can, but what are we to do? And in that course, then we basically had more or less prepared what is it that we know and what are the things that we think can go wrong, like what is it that we should be looking into beyond getting to a common language. But really, the assumption part is a big part of ecosystem bioflows course. And in that course, also, in Bayam, the people from Dada, Invisible Economy, participated. It's an artist collective who create visual conversations together on a platform, and they're directly put on IPFS. And they have basically created one of the first visual art collections on Ethereum in 2017 by forking a contract from CryptoPunks, so that early. Anyways, I met them in 2020 in that course, and Bea said, look, all this research, about incentives is if you throw money at intrinsic motivation, you basically crush it, right? And now you're telling, us we should be looking more into how we're going to incentivize people, but and change the world and make it beautiful and better. But do you actually know what you're going to break? And it's actually interesting. Everyone knows that research. Everyone. Because it's been researched and it's so plausible, and you can even feel it, right? Extrinsic motivation or extrinsic rewards aren't bad. They're even good, especially if you have repetitive things or things that you really have to push yourself. Then extrinsic rewards can be helpful. This nudging, as long as you say you know what you're consenting to. But really, the question of intrinsic motivation is the one that got me going since then, and actually led us all the way to Omega working group Omega, and even today we don't have an answer for that. Like, what are we rewarding, and how can we actually create systems that preserve those intrinsic motivations? And and still account for the value that you have created for those intrinsic motivations. So it's a nice puzzle. And and then also without, you want to have attribution, but you don't want to have leaderboards. You want to foster collaboration, cooperation. So why, make boards that can only show top 10, although you have hundreds of collaborators? And, showing how those top 3 people got there, showing the network that actually brought them to the visibility and so on. So we have so much more tooling that we could be using, visualization and so on. I think that's now is the time to get the artists really on board to challenge our imagination of what it is, how can we visualize value? Maybe not just account for it, not just bring in the metrics and the algorithms and have people quantify stuff that it's really hard to quantify, but maybe just making things visible, giving me that information so I can make decisions. That should be enough, right? So, but that's the area that hasn't been yet touched. And focusing on relationships, like reputation, never say never. I have to tell that to myself because obviously my Achilles heel is being too opinionated. But just to give you with a grain of salt, that strong opinion right now that I have is really, it's not helping. It is helping actually to know, like, who should I follow next, or with whom could I, from whom could I learn the most, or the next, what is the adjacent possible for me to orient. So these are really interesting, good information. But when it then leads to actually, that we have influencers, or that we have social scoring and what have you. For example, in my Meta profile, what could we do differently such that it doesn't become this, I have the most badges and can I get another badge, or can I get another recommendation, that people then just go about and try to optimize for those KPIs, for those events, and not actually the whole iceberg of the system that really goes down into the level of mental models that you'll be optimizing and maybe changing out entirely. So these are the areas that definitely need more transdisciplinary art.
When you talk about visualization, also as a sound artist, it reminds me of how we can also sonify this, like we can create sonifications of these interactions, and this is something really I'm starting to think about and explore, and would be really interested in collaborating with token engineers and this kind of way of seeing things. Because our society is so built on the visual, like we're like in the screens all the time, and we lose a bit the sense of the surrounding. And I think by visualizing with sound, it can change this somehow. Like imagine a bot that is always there, solidifying all the interactions, everything that is going in the channel. It's a way you can see this happening.
Super cool. Also, just even just bringing in what like your tooling, if you will, like what do you have in your tool belt? Like I can visualize frequencies, for example. It's like, oh, okay, let's see what we could do with it. What is the frequency in in our interaction? And so these are the things that we should, or that is what we mean by transdisciplinary art of token engineering. Number one, feel welcome because you are here. you're right here, right? You've been drawn into this very, very complex environment, and obviously anyone you're going to cross paths with, you have something in common. Namely that they also heard that calling, and when you look at their backgrounds, where they are coming from and what they are, also many of the people we meet have so many, like individually, so many diverse areas of activity and interest and experience. Even that is amazingly rich when you imagine. Yeah, I mean, you are all very young, and maybe that is your first interaction. So perfect, enjoy and create the best of it. But when you come from, or when you have been already educated in silos, then you are still feeling that what is different in these decentralized networks of value, especially around token engineering, as I had mentioned. So many people coming with so versatile experiences, digital tooling. And it's really about finding new ways of, going back, of coordination, of resource allocation, even new ways of determining what is a resource. And that gets us to the hopefully coming wave of, regenerative networks, regenerative finance, that we really look into how can we use these tools and techniques that we have to, well, not to just truncate the complexity, right? I mean, optimizing for profit, if you will, it's really easy, not doing it, but actually understanding what is it that I'm optimizing for, okay? Profit, okay. Revenues must be greater than costs at all costs, right? And then you start to externalize things so that your profit increases and so on. So it's very easy to also see why that leads to systems that are that are extracting actual value, and not just from natural resources, but actually also what those systems came to call human resources. It always reminds me of these scenes of Matrix, where you're basically part of an energy pool to be just extracted or used and extracted for maximized profit. So what is it that we're going to do differently? That must start with reimagining and then a new social contract that we say what we value. Right? If you value productivity at all costs, if you value pushing out features at all costs, if you value a number go up, users, token price, what have you, if we only optimize for those KPIs and we don't question whether it is worth optimizing for and what is it that we are trading off for it, if you don't ask those questions, we always say, making a bad system work more efficiently is not going to be fun. So, and that's basically the black art of token engineering, if you will. It could go really, really bad, much faster and at global scale. And that would be, of course, I think something none of us here wants or 5-year here not for.
I have one question, if it's okay. So, like you mentioned a bit, like in terms of like this values, societal values that we can adopt in a way, evolvingly. So I assume that we kind of reevaluate the values of society nowadays, especially for the last, I would say, like 10 years, especially with the coordination increasing through network effects. Like, how do you envision token engineers doing assumptions of revaluations of values? Like, how could we, in any sense, make certain assumptions that could create this network effect to our own community?
Yeah. And that was actually something, in this ecosystem flows course that I had mentioned, like one thing we say 3 times in the beginning and at the end and towards it all, it's like check your assumptions and enable everyone else to check your assumptions. But in the last one of the participants says, why don't you let the people own their own assumptions? These are participatory networks, right? And he handed me that reference to a book. It's called Who Owns Poverty? And actually from that we riffed off who owns token engineering ethics. Are we just, give a list of 10 do's and don'ts and you comply and then you're ethical and you're good to go? Or are we expecting actually every participant to own token engineering ethics? And similarly, discovering your values first and then owning comes after that. I guess that is, people don't want to hear that, because it's really, really hard. And the first time that, when I was asked to state my values, I was like, what are you talking about? But of course, this dude was telling me, what do you value? And I'm like, okay, he expects that I should be knowing that, so I'm just going to wing this and just make up good sounding values. And imagine, we are not legitimate, no matter how brilliant you are, or we are, or we think we are, legitimate to make assumptions about the values of participants. Of course, then you're like, okay, hands up, and you say, then we just give up, right? But, and again, like, I don't have any answers to that, but I think it is worth not giving up, and it's also worth not trying to, make it simple and truncate it. In a sense, let's just optimize for profit. Or let's just pick 5 values, and optimize for those 5 values in a global network of value. However, we know about fractals, and we know about where and how value is created. Well, number one, really, it's every individual, and it's a really journey worth taking, no matter which age you are. That awareness is really just worth having. And it is hard. What do I value? What am I here for? Why am I doing this? And actually, you know it, but it's hard to articulate. And if someone tells you, okay, now quantify that, you're like, but it is worth this inquiry is really worth. And then it is also worth value creation, like the participant, what I add, is it positive, negative, that's going to add to the value of the network or extract value or make things explode. So that's important, that every participant is enabled to have that insight. And then value creation in collaboration, starts with 2 people collaborating, and value is created in their exchange, in the relationship. Not this person, not that person, and not 80-60, or was it, 1355 to something else. But actually, just those 2 people or 3, 4 have created. But then also there are optimal sizes. You don't need hundreds of people to create something. Oftentimes, it's just a handful of people that create one piece or one area. And if they can create it in a way that it can become a compound in this value network that can be connected to other value creations. That is how we should be seeing it, like value networks, fractals, and then, you have to, again, come back to the source, that or you do your best to describe your intrinsic motivations, and also say, hey, I need extrinsic motivations for, getting to A or B. And then also, as soon as you collaborate with other people, that you get to that area. And that is something obviously absolutely human. We're not going to have any artificial intelligence help us there if you don't capture that, get access to that organic intelligence that we do have access to. And when we have covered that, I think the next thing is really about shaping our tools to help us hone that value creation, value description. What cryptoeconomics can do is give you methods of value capture. As soon as you can somehow digitalize those, somehow have interfaces to those, and give you abilities to programmatically share that value according to your values. So again, it really starts with me, the people I am coordinating with. And I say it so easily, I have no clue how to do it. And I'm in this because that was also, again, another Achilles heel. I failed so spectacularly with onboarding the first team into, decentralized energy for decentralized finance. or the other way around, decentralized finance for decentralized energy. Literally everyone was like running to the safe shore, drowning in token engineering knowledge. The people, the energy, like the domain people had no idea what we're trying to explain, and we weren't able to actually articulate it, let alone think about values, why we're in it, what is it that we can co-create. So yeah, I think in the past couple of years, we have been building that awareness, and in the last couple of weeks even, I'm hearing more and more of people actually caring about the people who are in this. So that's a good sign. That's a good, we're humming, and it's worth. Go ahead.
So actually, it was amazing and depthful analysis of how we value. So I want to ask, like,
Yeah.
while you were talking, you criticized bounties, which has been kind of culture in Web3 space and presented as the way for self-sovereign individuals. So can you elaborate your criticism on like how those things getting in touch with sovereignty, like, or I remember you a couple of times said that we don't want to create gig economy on cryptocurrencies. So I really agree with the argument, but these bounties has been presented as like duocracy and like way to sovereignty for within the Web3 space elsewhere. So how would you get in touch with that, and how will token engineers like engineer our incentives or like give us some sovereign power that we don't rely on those predefined value of bounties, rather we will be rely on our self valuation, let's say.
So the clean answer is that's what we got. We have bounties, like I know some things need to be done, and then I can describe those bounties, and people see and know exactly what they have to do or can do, and that's how you actually coordinate. That's how we know how to coordinate. And then you have the proposals, like meaning that's the more creative part, if you will. Like I have an idea, I want to propose something, and I'm going to propose this, and then we have the voting. That's what we got. But well, number one again is I think people actually wanting and also being enabled to not just take the simple path of okay, I'm just going to, because that's what we saw with Amazon, right? I mean, people are starting to unionize, which is good, but yes, please, take care of your take care of your value contribution. But again, I think these are the places where we really need new imagination. Like how do we create value? How do we coordinate? How do we know what to do, or discover it together? And how do we describe it so that others can connect to the things where they could be contributing? Well, one feedback that I got, for example, because I'm pushing that maybe too far without actually providing some insights, which I don't have currently. And if you know anything, please, I'm so thirsty for answers or for some direction. But someone said, he was saying employee, and I would, I want people to think of them as investors or investors of their time, whatever. But I don't know, these hierarchies or things that we know we associate with certain behaviors that just we don't have to drag along all of that into this new space. So I said, can we get rid of employee, the wording, make it an investment or investor of an intellectual investor, or investing your time into something. because you are being part of it, you are getting your stake, and that's something super important. Like what I don't like in token engineering commons right now is you make your proposal and you get X DAI. Well, that's the salary or that's cash, right? But you don't get a stake. You should always be getting a stake in that network's token, minimum. We're experimenting. So we can improve on that experiment, but getting that stake is super, super important. Yes, people have to pay rent, but again, you also want to own. You don't just want to give ownership to people with money, because that then, gets to the place where only people with money can make more money, and they somehow put it so that other people remain where they are, providing labor work. Labor is a wonderful word. There's labor of love. That's what I do. But the freedom, some space, protective spaces for creativity, which art is obvious, but science is definitely also space where what we need to protect. You can't get just, or we know what's wrong with getting funds for popular topics as a researcher. Do we want to take this into this new space? I hope not. And again, the proposal in Word was the first thing that I saw is actually changing the game a little bit there. So it's really worth thinking about how can we create, value? How can we help, or how can we make systems that account for that value creation and make value creators be investors? That's a seed invest. And then, of course, it has to be sustainable and so on. But I don't know if I gave a good answer. Like the answer is I don't have a real answer. We know these are our tools: bounties, proposals, vote. I don't like any three of them. Proposal inverters, like taking out the competitiveness, helping generate signals that people know, okay, if we put together our potential, then we can actually multiply that value. Think like an investor, think in multipliers. That's what we should be getting in there. Financial acumen is not that hard, but the economists and the financial quants make it seem so hard and tough. I think improving the tooling there, that people really get eloquent in seeing value flows and connecting them, because that's how we are actually be able to coordinate around value creation and improving that. So don't just become a bounty hunter. At the very least, get also the network's token.
Yeah, I think that was like very clarifying, like thoughts at least. Like, yeah, I know that it's not direct answer, but it clarifies lots of my thoughts. Thank you so much.
Most welcome.
To follow up, if it's possible, just with the last word, maybe. Like, so we could be talking about creation of values. So there was a kind of funny conversation I had last week with one of the stakeholders, let's say, and we're trying with like Prime Dada right now. We're trying to onboard new contributors in terms of like we're trying to implement this trial squad, so like we can try out as we give some kind of ownership as well in the meantime, and they basically job shadow certain leads in the different squads within the DAO, let's say. So they will be more, acknowledge about the workings of the DAO. And then he basically said, you're describing internship, right? So pull it that way.
Apprenticeship is actually a really, really interesting concept. And there is one person, Taylor Pearson, I've been following. I don't know, he's a very good writer. He wrote Blockchain Man, and he wrote a couple of pieces. And in one of his pieces, he's actually talking about apprenticeship. In Token Engineering Commons, Nick is here. She's a proponent. of peer learning, right? Also of mentorship, if you will. Just, who can I tag along with and learn from, but also, someone who might want to share their current learning to intensify it or deepen it. Don't call it internship, but this peer learning, I think, is the right way to describe it. Definitely, there has been a lot of insight already, like since the 70s, these topics have been at top of mind of some really, really beautiful minds. And we have, results of those. And now we have new tooling, we have more connectivity, we have, we just start at a much more elevated level to actually bring this forth much more. Is that, learning society. It's not about executing what is standard procedure, because that literally will be automated finally, or should be automated. We're also dreaming, or the fully automated luxury communism could become reality, kind of, one of those almost palpable fantasies. But anyways, I think that's the way you want to actually incentivize creativity, because the challenges that every network is getting at really requires some unconventional thinking. It requires knowledge exchange of really hard to assimilate knowledge. So these peer learning, again, it's a very big value stock in your network. So the onboarding should naturally come through that. When I did ecosystem value flows, first time I was like just amazed what came after that. But then second and third time, like the people who apply, how they describe their intentions, what they want, why they want to participate, and so on, and all of that. And then also spending 3 weeks with people with the same intention, having this exchange of value of learning. And you don't, as a teacher, you learn much more than maybe your students, and vice versa. And the best learning happens among the participants. So I say I will never ever hire any, hire won't happen. Well, I still work with traditional companies, but even with them, I would say I will never hire through just job descriptions, but really make an event, make a learning, a bootcamp, what have you, to first of all also explain what you're doing or what you're up to, more than you could do in an interview in 15 minutes. Right, to really have that experience of embarking onto something together. And even if only 3 people stay, you can be sure that those 3 people are value aligned. They are up to speed for sure after 3 weeks spending with the best minds of your network. So I think it's great. I wouldn't call it internship maybe, because or volunteering or stuff like that just burns have been used to extract value. Yeah. But when you actually make them participants, make them actually earn the network token, help them earn the network token while they're learning, and so it's a beautiful experience for everyone involved.
I agree. I actually wanted to connect that to something that you said, because I think there's this interconnection. So you said we need to imagine new ways, right? We need to explore new areas. So what I was gonna bring it back to is this apprenticeship exactly. And I was gonna say apprenticeship was a culture, has been a culture throughout centuries, let's say, right? And through the scalability, it became internship. And right now, due to the scarcity of contributors within the space, now we're experiencing the possibility of apprenticeship again. So are we reimagining the values, or are we actually finding options that can be applied, and we're not actually imagining we bring it back. Like, it's like circular.
Yeah, so similar to my amazement of this knowledge of the 70s, that we're just, having better tooling now to rethink those thoughts and reimagine them or implement new. The same way, like things that have survived thousands and thousands of years across our human, history, definitely are valuable things, right? So again, I believe we're also seeing some back to the roots or back to wisdom, back to things that have just worked, and capturing those. I mean, Durgadas here is, I call him the coach. He's been sharing his wisdom, and that wisdom is, old wisdom. Oh, we have a roomie in Web3. Do you know Andy Chithelp, Crypto Wanderer? He has created the learning track of kernel community. Definitely recommend. And basically, he's one of the first mystics of Web3 that I met. And right after that, I actually met Fabian, and then Durgadas is also, people really bringing wisdom into the space and inspiring, the engineers to.
I actually wanted to share like a framing that we could retool. So something that I like that I get from Douglas Rushkoff, it says humanity happens peer to peer, and like in this case, wisdom, knowledge applies happens peer to peer. Like when we research, and when we research and learn in class, then we have to go and do it. Like I'm for a lifetime ago, I was a professional cook, so I went to culinary school. But when I was in the kitchen, I didn't know anything. Like I had a stage for a week, unpaid, but that was to like learn the dance of the kitchen. Like in the kitchen, when things are good, it's an orchestra. There's no one's verbally telling people like, watch out. It's when kitchen's not working, there's all noise. Everybody's yelling, flashing pans, and everybody's. When it's working good, it's an orchestra. You don't have to say anything to the person next to you because you can feel them and you move. And I just want to bring that in.
Practice, yeah. I had a similar exchange also from dancers, Motion Dao. Like they've been, or I asked them whether choreography can be distributed. And one of the dancers said, "Oh yes, improvisation actually. It has to do with intent listening to the other, and intent listening, again, the same, right? Intent listening to yourself, and that's how you improvise. And it's at some point gets so you're like really utterly concentrating. And imagine that's how we would be creating value instead of focusing on our tools and calendars and reminders. So that orchestration, that these types of coordination that we know humans have been practicing beautifully in other areas, also sources of inspiration, definitely, if not even sources of actually some process and some practice learning that we could get. So I'm excited about that part, that transdisciplinary art part of engineering. So that's new to me as well. It's again, everything that's new brings in new insights as food for thought. That's as good as food or roof for me. Yeah.
Like we sorry, go ahead, please.
No. I was just looking at the hour.
I was just going to say we've been talking about 110 minutes, but like it passed very fast because like with all deep thoughts, like while I'm focusing on it and I looked with the clock, it's like, oh, it's already 1 hour. So if there is no question, I would like to close it down. So thank you very, very much, Shemnam. Like it's an honor to see you here, sharing your wisdom, sharing your thoughts. It was really an interesting discussion. Thank you so much for
Thank you for
coming.
the invitation. It was a great intro into Prime DAO, so I'll stick around and hopefully also see you guys over at Token Engineering Commons. Hop on to Omega if you want to exchange on these.
That's what I was
Thanks
gonna
a
ask.
lot.
Are there any events that we should like participate, like where we can hear your ideas and like kind of learn about the trend?
Oh, yeah, we are like what is currently happening, and if you're interested in it, really hop over. The working style of the working group Omega, where we really took care that really everyone feels welcome, in a sense, not just welcome participate, but like you are part of a network, token engineering network. This transdisciplinarity and so on and so forth, and also designing for emergence, complexity tolerance. Again, Durgadas is the complexity coach, and we've been figuring out like how can we. Well, we've been improvising for a year to let this really emerge, have enough data, if you will, how we're going to do it differently. And now we are looking back, settling down, using really some interesting facilitation frameworks again that comes from Dogadas and others who are joining Token Engineering Commons, who come from that facilitation and change management or organizational innovation aspect. So we have really some good tools and a lot of insights, or a lot of things that we're sorting through, and some insights are coming across. So that's happening Wednesday at 8 p.m. in the Token Engineering Commons server, in the voice channel Omega, or in the chat Omega. If you look maybe a couple of hours before, a day before almost never, but if you look a couple of hours before, you should have the agenda there and then see what expects you, and if it speaks to you, feel welcome to join or in any way participate. I mean, what we really want is have more practitioners also come in, really this, who owns token engineering ethics. We all do. So definitely come, and we will also have some more focus group type of events. Marta's preparing a research topic, and those research topics are going to feed the focus groups, where we're inviting them practitioners to exchange with them what is their experience in the trenches and that topic. Maybe Mart, you say a few words.
As a research topic, we would like to understand. So while we are discussing token engineering, we were referring incentive design anywhere elsewhere. So while we are designing incentives, we are actually designing behaviors as well. And also while we are designing behaviors, actually we are affecting structures as well, as the agents are getting in relation with the structure. And also, again, a circular manner, the structure is affecting the agent. So while as actually incentive design is designing the society. So through this behavior, it contains moral behaviors as well. So for example, if you create a like risky algorithm, let's say, people would be more fearful in a very simplified way. So in this research question, we would like to analyze how those token engineering parameters will affect certain behaviors, and how do we approach them, not through just profit maximizing way, but as a human behavior construction. So the idea that we will like discuss governance processes, reward systems, like tokenomics, all those other things in relation with human behavior and human morality.
So you can contribute to those research areas as well, and then a lot of housekeeping is happening. So
amazing content.
Okay. Thank you so much
everyone.
for everyone like coming here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sebnem.
Take
Thanks.
good care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Let's have them. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye guys. Mert, amazing job. Thank you abi.
Thank you.